Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next installation of our online town halls. Pleased to be joined by Jeremy Patzer, member from Cypress Hills Grassland, about as far away from Northern Alberta as you can get in Saskatchewan, I imagine.
Pretty close. We're down in the southwest. So I mean, Robert Kitchen in the southeast might be a little bit further away, but we're far southwest, American border, Alberta border. That's where we are.
Okay. Well, from the top edge of Peace River Westlake, you can spit and hit the territories border. So we're covering the whole spectrum there for sure. So
yeah.
I always like to tell everybody about Peace River Westlake. We're the honey capital of Canada. We got 7,500 dairy animals, so we're flowing with milk and honey. So I like to call it the promised land.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So what do they do in Cypress Hills Grassland?
We're all about our canola seed. That's a big one there, and our pulse crops. But more of the grain farming side of things there.
Okay. Yeah, where we come from, it's the 3 F's, as I like to call them: forestry, farming, and fracking. So, and I think we'll give you a run for your money on the not necessarily the acres of canola planted, but the tonnage of canola produced. That was always kind of a running gun battle between Chris Warkington, myself, and Kathy Wagentall. We were always like, who produced the most canola?
Yeah,
it's always a big deal.
Yeah, see, our claim to fame is the quality.
Oh,
maybe not the quantity, but we got the quality.
Okay.
So if you get a good grade A crop, you're going to find it down in Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Okay. So I met Jeremy shortly after he got elected in 2019. I got reelected in 2019. We were both new, or both came. I came back, and he was one of the new MPs. I was excited to see him. I'd known his predecessor very well, David Anderson, and so I was looking forward to meeting the new guy. So this is the new guy.
Great to be here.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact instance when we met. Maybe was it candidate training or?
Yeah, it was the training session there, and I do remember you said I could come and take over part of your office until they found out where my office was going to be once I was elected. And I still remember trying to find my way through all the different nooks and crannies of the Valor building, and I can't find the Valor building on the map. It's like, well, that's Spark Street. That's why.
Oh yeah.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
All these buildings have fancy names to them, but they don't necessarily show up on the maps either. So that made it fun.
Yeah, I remember with the new crop, I made the mistake of saying the Valor building, and somebody punched that into Google, and they ended up taking a 20-minute taxi drive to a Valor Street. Apparently there's a Valor Street somewhere here in Ottawa, which is about 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's the Valor building. There's here on Parliament Hill. That's where we're sitting right now. And there's Confederation building. There's Wellington building. These are the buildings that MP's offices are in. So
yeah.
Where did you end up getting an office?
I am also in the Valor building. I am located on the 7th floor with a bunch of my fellow Saskatchewan MPs as well too. So it's a great floor to be on.
Okay. Very cool. So what did you do before you got elected, Jeremy?
I spent about 10 years working for SaskTel. It's a telecommunications company in Saskatchewan. Did residential, business, both urban and rural, internet, telephone. We did a lot of fiber optic work as well. There's a big project going on in Swift Current where I live. That was a big one there. So yeah, spent a lot of time doing that. So the broadband issue that all of us in rural Saskatchewan have grown to love over the years, that's I would say that'd be one of my specialties.
Okay. And married with kids?
Yeah, married with kids, got 3 kids, got a son and 2 daughters, and they're all very active in their own ways. My son's playing baseball. He made the AAA team this year, which is awesome. They actually have a league going on this year. He had his first games over the weekend. Pretty excited about that. My youngest daughter's playing soccer. She's got her first game. Actually today, it's happening right now as we're doing this. So
okay.
She's pretty excited about that. And our other daughter, she's doing voice and piano lessons as well. So she's got bit more of the artistic side, which is awesome. It's all 3 of our kids have their own unique personalities and the things that make them awesome.
Yeah. So it sounds like sports are up and running again in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it absolutely is. That they all played hockey all winter long. They didn't play any games. There was a couple of games at the start of the year before the games got canceled, but they were able to still practice with their teams in a little bit of a limited fashion, but they played all winter long. So once spring rolled around though, they got baseball going, and with the latest rollout of the provincial plan they're able to start playing games as well too. So first games are on the weekend, which is awesome.
Okay. And your farming background, grew up on a farm, or?
Yeah, you bet. My dad was a grain farmer. They sold the farm just about 10 years ago now, I guess. But yeah, big grain farmers there. We were right down literally 2 miles from the American border. So we pretty big grain farming operation though.
Okay. And just grain farming, no, not a mixed farm of any sort, like no. Or animals of anything.
No animals. No, we had chickens for a few years as a kid, but that was just one more thing to look after and take care of. So eventually we just scrapped that operation.
Okay. I was in your office a while back, and there's a certificate on the wall that says you're an instructor. What are you an instructor of?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, it was my dream to be a golf professional, not a professional golfer. My golf game isn't quite that good. But I went down to the United States and took a course on teaching golf. So I've got my certification through the United States Golf Teachers Federation to teach golf lessons.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and here in Parliament, so you've been elected now for coming on 2 years, and you sit on the Natural Resources Committee. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's been really good. After the leadership race there, when there's a few shuffles in different positions and whatnot, that was when I joined the Natural Resources Committee. It's been really good. We've done a forestry study so far, which, constituents in your riding will know a lot more about that than I do. Trees aren't necessarily the first thing that grows in Saskatchewan, but at least in my riding. But yeah, that was really good, really informative. We had some really good witnesses there. We've been working on a critical mineral study as well too, and yeah, it's been a really good committee to be a part of, and yeah.
Okay, critical minerals. Tell. I don't know anything about that. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, that one, the scope of the study had more to do with electric vehicle batteries and how Canada is positioned for going forward with developing a industry more or less on it, right? So okay. Very interesting study. Lots of, again, really good witnesses on that study to talk about, how the Environmental Impact Assessment Act is having a negative effect on more than just the energy sector. It's also these other resource industries that are being negatively impacted by it as well too. There's actually a really interesting example that came up, and it actually has to do with the CUSMA deal. There was a 3-year window to source lithium, 75% of lithium tariff-free for how it's used for EV batteries. And we heard testimony that there's no way that we'll be able to get the production done within that 3-year time limit because of the Impact Assessment Act.
Okay.
So
that's like kind of an exemption on tariffs for 3 years.
Yeah, you had 3 years to source 75% of your lithium regionally within the parameters of the CUSMA deal. Yeah.
Okay, and just approvals won't happen within 3 years.
No, not a chance.
Wow. Forestry, we're hearing again around the softwood lumber agreement, the lack of a softwood lumber agreement. That's a huge problem for where I'm at. I think we're currently under a 23% tariff, and that's going up right now. What did you guys hear at committee about that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in one of our most recent meetings, we had the Natural Resources Minister show up, and actually Bob Zimmer, our colleague from Northern BC, he brought up the fact that the American trade rep was saying that they can't get a deal in place because Canada is not at the negotiation table. So Bob was asking Minister O'Regan about that, and Minister O'Regan took the opposite approach, saying, "Well, we're ready to negotiate. We're waiting for the Americans to show up." So it's definitely an interesting situation. We heard from a lot of different witnesses on our study on forestry about the negative impact that it's having, and particularly for the Indigenous communities that have companies that are set up, and they're losing on all kinds of opportunity, and stumpage rates as well goes into that. But the softwood lumber agreement is having a huge impact, and particularly now, as we've seen in the pandemic, the shortages that we have on lumber and the way the prices have gone up. We look at all the lumber mill closures over the number of years. There was a few that reopened here over the last probably 6 months here to try to catch up with some of the demand. But yeah, really interesting for sure.
Yeah, we had a big mill in a Toco mill. So they made OSB and they got fired up again, I think about 2.5 years ago. And the price has just been amazing the last year or so. It's just the COVID or whatever has been bringing it on. So it's it's been hopeful, but the tariff is like a huge drain on all of that. It's 23%, right? So that's fairly dramatic.
Yeah.
So back a while back, when the introduction of these quarantine hotels came on, I'm not sure if most people are aware, I think, of the quarantine hotels. So if you travel outside of Canada, fly into any of the major airports in Canada, you have to stay in a hotel when you return, a government sourced hotel. There's been a lot of controversy around these particular hotels. And Jeremy, you were one of the first to kind of speak out against this. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I heard what the government's plan was for these quarantine hotels, I drafted a letter to the Prime Minister just saying, would you reconsider this program here? We don't need to be infringing upon Canadians' rights to go into their own home upon returning to Canada. And interestingly enough, the day that I published the open letter was the same day that the first person, I think it was in Calgary, was taken into a hotel quarantine, but the program hadn't even started yet. So it really triggered off this whole interesting situation where you have a guy being taken away and, the family isn't being notified of where this person was being taken. And the next day it happened to somebody else again. And again, the program hadn't even been rolled out yet. So there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of angst around that. And the letter got a lot of attention for sure. And unfortunately, I still haven't got a response from the Prime Minister's office on it. But now we're starting to see there's an expert advisory panel that's recommending that the hotel quarantine program just be scrapped. It's, there's the variants have come into Canada. So that was one of the stated goals of this program, and it didn't do anything to prevent that from happening. There's a lot of other incidences that happened as well too. I'm sure everybody's pretty aware of that with different posts online of just some of the conditions that they face. And there was the sexual assaults that happened as well too. So it was just, I don't think there's too much good that really came of the whole program. It should be scrapped. And I put a letter out saying, hey, don't even do it in the first place. But here we are.
Government didn't listen to you.
No, go figure.
Oh my. Well, there have been some recent wins in Parliament lately. We have had a couple of pro farming bills passed. One from our colleague Philip Lawrence. I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because the goal of it is to exempt all farm fuels from the carbon tax. One of the principal reasons for that farmers use natural gas for obviously is grain drying, right? Especially up in your neck of the woods too. The moisture level of crop when it's taken off is a lot higher. So grain drying is a very common practice, but it's also a very expensive practice. But when you have an escalating tax, like the carbon tax on it, just makes it just that much more punishing just to simply do a necessary function to be able to harvest crops that we need here in Canada and around the world. And we were able to pass private members bill that Philip Lawrence put forward. It's a really good bill. And looking forward to the Senate hopefully getting it done as quickly as possible, because that's an important one for sure.
Yeah, our way anyways, the last 5 years that we've seen a lot of poor harvest. Well, the last harvest is good, but probably 4 prior to that, a lot of wet harvests and a lot of grain drying has been happening. And so this is welcome. The Liberals have kind of responded to that in the budget, and they've said that they're going to introduce a rebate for the carbon tax on farm fuels, which is different than not charging it in the first place. But so we'll see which one gets implemented first. The private members bill is now passed to the House of Commons. It's going off to the Senate, so it has to pass to the Senate. The Liberals have it in their budget, but now they have to implement it. So maybe there's a bit of a race that's on with that. We'll see what happens. You just never know what happens in the Senate, or if we have an election sooner or later. So the other one was from our colleague from Brandon Souris in Manitoba, Larry McGuire. Are you familiar with that one? You can tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, that's another one as well too, and it's one that I heard a lot from my constituents about as well too. And it has to do with the financial implications of passing your family farm from generation to generation. Basically, the way it's situated right now would be more financially beneficial for you to sell your farm to me than for you to one day pass it down to someone in your family. This bill, the mechanism in it, I believe, is to make family members to be at arm's length. So that way it's easier to pass that farm down through the generations. So that way you can keep your generational farms going. I know my uncle, he lives on the original homestead that our family came established when they came to Canada. So we had the 100-year celebration. That would have been 11 years ago now already. So that, it's important that he's able to pass that down to to my cousins, and hopefully one day their kids to their, keep it going, right? And this bill helps make that possible. And again, numerous people have reached out to my office talking about the need for that issue to be addressed. And Larry's bill definitely does that. So.
Yeah. So as far as I understand, there's something about if you sell it to a total stranger, you claim a capital gain on the farm. But if you sell it to a family member, the income's deemed to be dividends. And so there's a dramatic tax implication difference. And so that this would just essentially eliminate that difference. It would say, like, no matter who you sell it to, the tax implication would be the same and be lower. Because that's the important part. Conservatives were always fighting for lower taxes, not higher taxes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One of the things we spent quite a bit of time harassing the government about lately is this line 5. Back in February 26th, I actually asked a question of the government saying that this line 5 was being under attack. Line 5 is a pipeline that runs from Edmonton to Sarnia, runs through the state of Michigan, and the governor of Michigan had said that they were going to revoke the license for that pipeline to operate on May the 12th. And so I asked already in February about that, and the government said, don't worry, we got it under control. And then we've done a few more things. Jeremy, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we had emergency debate in the House on it, where we had speeches, we had Q&A on it, which was really good. We were able to raise awareness on that. Like you, I had a question in the House of Commons about it too. I've had a member statement as well that touched on just energy projects at large that have been at risk by this government. But yeah, that line 5 development was pretty huge. We had the minister talking about that at committee as well too. Lots of good words. It's saying it's non-negotiable and saying it's an utmost priority for the government. But again, right now it's sitting in the hands of the U.S. courts, and fortunately, Enbridge is keeping the line going, which is good. It's keeping jobs, it's keeping that certainty for people that are working in Sarnia, and our colleague Marilyn Gladue is riding. Very important economic driver there for sure. But yeah, if that line gets shut in, that's going to be pretty huge consequences, and just the effect of it's going to be felt pretty massively out here in Eastern Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things I was pointing out I was meeting with the Barra Town Council today, actually. One of the things I pointed out to them is, so this pipeline's operating illegally at this point. They no longer have a license.
Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons why it hasn't been turned off yet is because we've seen that southern states, there was a pipeline that got hacked and it got shut down. And then there was like massive gasoline shortages on the eastern seaboard. And so I guess they kind of got a taste of what shutting a pipeline down looks like. And I think that may have something to do with the fact that it's still operating currently.
Oh yeah, the footage of people taking plastic grocery bags, trying to fill them with gas and putting them in their laundry basket to throw in the back of their car to just be able to do whatever they could to get their hands on gas while they still could. And
yeah, it was pretty scary.
Yeah, pretty chaotic.
Yeah, so that's so we had an emergency debate. Then we also had a concurrence motion on May 11th. Conservatives were calling on the government to resolve this issue. On May 11th, we seem to have spurred the government on to taking action in American courts. Were you familiar at all with this? We have a treaty with the United States on pipelines.
A little bit, yeah. I got to confess, I don't know all the details of it for sure, but yeah, there is that treaty there that is an option for the government to use. So
yeah, so back in 1977, the American government actually was the initiator of this pipeline treaty, which said that if a pipeline crossed the American-Canadian border and then crossed back into the original country again, that the country that it crossed through couldn't shut down the portion that it crossed through. That was in their interest as they were anticipating building pipelines from Alaska to the lower 50. And then nowadays, we would like to stand on that. Interestingly, back in 1977, a Senator, Joe Biden, endorsed that treaty back then. And so it'd be like, hold him to his own words, essentially. Plus, the Prime Minister seems to think that he's got a great relationship with Mr. Biden. So we said use that relationship to maintain these pipelines. But
we'll see how, if they're willing to put their money where their mouth is on this one. So
one of the other things, and Jeremy was elected in 2019, so he wasn't around here, but back in 2015, there was a pipeline on the books that ran parallel to Line 5 called Energy East. And ironically, if the Liberals hadn't kiboshed that pipeline, it might actually be coming on stream right about now, taking the pressure off of maintaining the Line 5 and not being reliant on another country for energy security. But C69 hasn't helped that, but that specific case, they brought in new measures that were odious just for that one pipeline. So that was something.
Well, and ironically, now we're shipping oil from the West Coast all the way through the Panama Canal and up around to the refineries on the East Coast, because that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, unbelievable.
I've seen you've been up on C21. Wonder if you can tell us a little bit about C21 and what's its impacts on Canada.
The C21, that's another one that, again, you wonder who the government is listening to when they're talking about these bills, talking about how they're drafting it, what the process is going into it, and just the punitive measures that go into it. And honestly, some of what's written into it is quite laughable, as we're starting to see, the airsoft gun community, the paintball community, they're going to be massively impacted by this, because a lot of the air guns that they use are going to be prohibited by this piece of legislation as well too. It also ties into the order in council that banned, 1,400 different makes and models as well too. So there's a lot of implications on this one as well. And again, a big issue. I've been hearing a lot of feedback from my constituents about it and about the need to stop this bill. It also kind of dovetails into bills C22 as well. That's another one that was coming up for debate here too, that has to do with sentencing, I believe. So lots of issues with that one for sure. And we're definitely working hard to oppose that, because it's bad. It only punishes law-abiding citizens. It doesn't do anything to tackle the real issue, and that's gangs, right?
Yeah. So I think Bill C21 was debated last week, Friday, and tomorrow I do believe Bill C22 is up for debate.
Yeah, so that's right.
Yeah. On Monday, we had the opportunity to debate Bill C6. This is a highly controversial bill banning conversion therapy. Jeremy, do you want to just tell us a little bit about how that's gone? You and I are a couple of the MPs that have opposed this bill at its first reading. Do you want to just talk a little bit about Bill C6, what it does, and what changes we're hoping to get to that bill?
Yeah, the C6 is some of the criminal code changes involve banning the advertising and the monetization of conversion therapy. But there's a lot of other things that get tied up into it. There's a lot of concerns around the rights of parents to be able to have conversations with their children, the rights of even pastors and faith leaders to be able to talk to their congregants about issues of sexuality as well too, and teaching the biblical perspective on it. Generally speaking, though, also just counsel at large, and this bill potentially is going to create a situation where one group of citizens is going to be able to get access to counseling that they freely choose, but one other section of the population won't be able to, just purely because of their sexual orientation or how they identify. And that's discrimination. That's not right. So I hope I'm wrong. I hope my interpretation of that is wrong, but I'm hearing from a lot of different people, a lot of different organizations that are concerned about this. I know you are as well too. We look at the committee when they talked about C6. There's over 300 briefs in committee, which is probably, I think it is a record for the amount of submissions to a committee on a specific issue. And they didn't take the time to actually even get the submissions translated to be able to consider them at committee before they rammed the bill through into the House of Commons. I think it's really important that when we have a bill that is very important like this one, that as parliamentarians, we take the time to hear all the different debates on it, to hear all the different points of view on this. So that way we can make sure we're getting the best piece of legislation possible. So that way we can do what's right for the LGBTQ community, but we can also respect the rights of parents and the rights of other groups as well. And again, we want to put a stop to any of these bad practices that are out there, but we also need to be respectful of other groups as well.
Mm-hmm. And today we spent the day debating an opposition day motion. So currently, or often in the House of Commons, there's like a timeline, and in that particular each quarter, I think it's about each quarter of the year, the government has to give the opposition parties an opposition day where we get to work to pass a motion. Sometimes they pass, sometimes they don't. And so today we were talking about we have a virology lab in Manitoba, and there's been some controversy surrounding that. Jeremy, I was wondering if you can just tell us a little bit about what's going on there and what our motion was hoping to achieve.
Yeah, there was a few individuals who were let go from the lab, but there's also some very sensitive material that was sent from that lab to the Wuhan lab as well. Now, it wasn't the coronavirus that was transferred. It wasn't that per se, but there were some links to some of these individuals to the Chinese military, I believe. And so we're trying to get some information, get some documents released on those, just what was going on there, right? And that's what this motion is about, to try to get some answers from the government, the way the situation was handled, why these people were fired, but they were still at the lab for a period of time before they were out of the country, and just what was all going on there. We need all that information. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a good motion. I'm looking forward to the vote tomorrow to see how the other opposition parties will vote on it. But yeah, it's really interesting. The Liberal government seems to have very much a affinity for China. We've seen them when the pandemic struck, rather than following with most Western nations in the development of a vaccine. Canada actually partnered with China to develop the vaccine. That relationship has since soured, and now we were at the back of the line for general vaccines. But in this case as well, Canada appears to have given members of the Chinese military access to some of the most the highest level secret access, security access in the country to this particular lab. Yeah. And when a committee of the House of Commons is requesting documents, the government isn't providing those documents, and so that's what this motion is all about. I think the motion gives them 2 days to produce the documents. Yeah.
So that's right. So we'll see. I think that we'll put it, if the motion passes, which it seems likely. I think we've got all the opposition parties on board, and so we should have a majority of the members of Parliament supporting our motion, so it should pass. So that gives them until about Friday to get us the documents. So we'll be voting on it on Wednesday. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. It's just extremely disconcerting that not only are the Liberals cooperating with China in many of these things, but then when members of Parliament are requesting the documents, the Liberal government is odious to even provide us with the documents. And so that's what we've been dealing with today, and we'll see what happens tomorrow with the vote on that for sure.
Yeah.
So lastly, just before we open it up to questions here, Jeremy, we've all seen the story around the 215 graves of the children in Kamloops. It's been devastating. I just wondering if you want to just address that a little bit here as we wrap this up.
Yeah, it definitely is devastating for sure. And, it's one of those things where you just hope that we can get the answers to it, and we can provide some form of closure to the families who are directly affected by this. As a parent of young children, I can't imagine, what the feeling would be like for those families, and for the parents, and for the grandparents now down. This has happened years ago, so I can't imagine what people are going through. So I mean, it's one of those situations where we can listen and we can learn, and I think we need to make sure that we do the due process to make sure we find answers and provide some closure for the people affected.
Yeah, it certainly is a black eye on the history of Canada. There's no doubt about that. We often think that mass graves are something that that happens somewhere else in the country or in the world, and here we are grappling with that reality right here in this country, and it's just it's a stark reminder of the capacity for humanity to pursue evil. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. So Dale is running the things in the background. He works for me. Dale, is there any folks on here that would like to ask either Jeremy or myself or both of us a question on any of these topics or all of these topics, or of any other topic that they want to bring up?
No, we got a first question coming from Jeremy on Facebook. He asked, sort of, what about the legislation saying there should be no election during a pandemic? We know that this is going to turn out bad for people. Only one Canadian MP voted against it. Could you talk a little bit about this and why this vote happened?
Well, it was a motion that was put forward by the Bloc Québécois. And what it did, it just said that it was irresponsible for there to be an election during the pandemic, just given that over 25,000 people have passed away because of the pandemic. So it's not that it's saying that we absolutely cannot have an election during the pandemic. It's just saying that, recognizing that it would be irresponsible to do so.
Mm-hmm. And that said, we have had several confidence votes since that particular motion has passed, and Conservatives have voted non-confidence on the government several times since. It's not binding us to anything. We continue to hold the government to account, and our Conservatives are ready to have an election if there is going to be one. Yeah. But the reality of a pandemic is not a great time to be pushing one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, one of the questions that came in by email was just how is Canada being and the West, and particularly the Prairie provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan, getting represented? And also, like, because it seems like the Liberals and a lot of the spending that's happening, it's only for big rural or big urban centers. What are the Conservatives doing to fight for and represent sort of rural Canada and often these areas that don't have many people living there?
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that I've done, particularly because I am a rural MP, is to make sure that when I'm giving speeches that I talk about how this issue is going to impact rural Canadians. We also just had the budget finally for the first time in a couple of years. That was a great opportunity as well for the government to try to address some of the issues that are impacting rural Canadians. And I think the document mentions rural and remote Canadians about 81 times, but it's more just as a tag. And there is no, I would say, real meaningful support for rural Canadians. So Conservatives in the last election, we actually had as part of our policy item there that as government, any decision that is made, it has to have a rural lens applied to it. So that way we can make sure that our decisions as a government are going to be focused on rural areas and urban areas. So that way we're focusing on all Canadians, not just on specific areas. That it's when we think of public transit, right? We always look at the public transit announcements. Well, it's always Toronto, it's always Vancouver. It's never down in you're not going to hear anything for public transit in Cadillac, Saskatchewan, right? So that's what we're facing. So we got to talk about the issues that people in rural Canada face, and that's something that I know Arnold and I both make sure that we have that lens on everything that we talk about is on that rural perspective.
Yeah, and I would just mention as well, we talked a little bit about a couple of the private members' bills. So Larry McGuire's private members' bills to bring equity to whether a farmer sells his farm to his children or to some total stranger, and to bring tax equity to that. We talked about Philip Lawrence's bill to remove the carbon tax from farm fuels. The member of Parliament for Red Deer, Lacombe, Blaine Calkins, he's got one on bringing a tax credit for home security systems in rural areas. We've got Tom Kemich, the member of Parliament for a piece of Calgary there. He's brought a private member's bill to outline and fix some of the equalization problems that we see in the equalization formula. So his bill Tom Kemich's bill would do three things. One, it would change the name of the Federal Provincial Fiscal Transfers Act to the Equalization Act, so that everybody would know what we're talking about when we're talking about provincial federal transfers. So equalization is an idea that's in the Constitution, but when it actually comes to legislation, we rarely talk about it. So that would rename it so that we would know what we're talking about. The other piece that it would do is it would mandate that the government make the equalization formula public. Currently, we don't know what the formula is. Folks like the Fraser Institute kind of reverse engineer it. So they see, okay, this is the money that Alberta is anticipated to have paid into the Federation of Canada, and this is the money that Alberta gets back from the Federation of Canada. Therefore, the formula is about this, and then they check it out for other provinces and stuff like that. And so they try to kind of figure out what that formula is, but it's not a public formula, and there's no public negotiation around that. So that bill would have to make it a public formula, and would also have like a mandates a public negotiation that would happen with the provinces for that formula. And the last thing that it would do as well is it would remove the cap. So currently there's a cap on the fiscal stabilization program of $60 per person. And that is an arbitrary cap. Nobody can explain why that's there. And so his bill, Tom Kemich's bill, would remove that cap so that when a province sees a decline in their revenues, the fiscal stabilization program would help to ease that decline. We see that the Liberals have kind of answered that request in the budget, but they haven't removed the cap, but they've raised that cap from $60 to $160. So those are just some of the things that the Conservative caucus has been working on. We've got a bill from James Cummings to repeal C-48, which was the no more shipping ban on the West Coast, a thing that the bill that really killed Northern Gateway pipeline. So the James Cummings is the member from Edmonton Centre. He introduced that bill. That bill did not pass, but Conservatives are every day coming up with new and innovative ideas to hold the government to account and put forward ideas that would help unify this country and get some pipelines built. I don't know if you got any other off the top of your head, some of the things that maybe I'm pretty familiar with the Alberta guys, but maybe there's some of the prime members bills that have been coming out of Saskatchewan. I know.
Yeah, well, I know Robert Kitchen talks a lot about carbon capture and storage. He's got the first full-scale carbon capture unit in his riding at Boundary Dam there. And I know in Alberta that carbon capture and storage and enhanced soil recovery is becoming more popular.
Yeah.
So there's
I
more
think
of that coming online.
What was it? Greg McLean, one of the new MPs from Calgary, he has a bill on recognizing that and having a tax credit for carbon capture.
Yeah, that's right. So there's, Greg McLean has one there as well too. I just kind of going back to my committee work, I really find it fascinating that, we all know Bill C-69 as the No More Pipelines bill, but it's also slowly becoming the No Green Energy bill as well too, because it is impacting the critical minerals sector and other industries that, quite frankly, have to go through the environmental impact assessment, and the delay that it's taking to get these projects approved. We've even heard from some testimony that it's making some of these projects not even financially viable, just because by the time that gets approved, the demand is gone and what they're trying to meet. So we need more certainty in that. So we know that's something that our leader is committed to fixing that problem as well, and scrapping Bill C-69.
Yeah. Dale, is there another question?
There's another question on Bill C-10, that there's people that are still concerned about Bill C-10, and kind of, do you know where it's at and what's being done to fight it?
Yeah. Maybe you want to start on this one.
Yeah. So it's C-10 is the major attack that the Liberals have brought on freedom of speech in Canada. They basically are making it so that your Facebook page or your YouTube channel are going to be regulated as if they were the same as CTV. So that's essentially what we've got going on with Bill C-10. It was originally a less of an attack on free speech, but it was seriously amended at committee. The Liberals took out a bunch of exemptions that had been in it. And now we see it's gone back to committee. As far as I know, it's back at committee, and they're getting it reassessed as to whether it's charter compliant. Conservatives are committed to preventing this bill from going forward. If we're unable to do that, then also repeal it after we win the next election. That's the plan for sure. At this point, it sounds like the NDP and the Bloc are both supportive of it. So the Liberals have the votes to ram it through if they choose to do that. And so I guess we'll wait and see. Jeremy, I don't know if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, no, I think you really touched on all of it there. But I think having that charter compliance issue dealt with again, I think that's really important. That's really key to get it back before committee to get that done again. We're going to do all of our due diligence that we possibly can on this bill to make sure that we can stop it in its tracks. But I mean, like Arnold alluded to, it looks like, the government has the necessary votes to pass this legislation through. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Our colleague, Rachel Harder, is doing a good job on that one as well too. She's done really well with that.
Yeah,
lots of good meetings with me, and you got people like Michael Geist who are opposing it as well too.
Yeah, and I guess like people, C10 folks are concerned about the freedom of speech and things like that, and like basically the crux of it is that like if you have a Facebook page or a YouTube channel, who should be the arbiter of what is successful, what moves forward on that, and who should be the judge of what gets held back? And that's essentially, like, we've seen thousands of Canadians become extremely successful on YouTube, and for the government to become the arbiter of who gets to be successful on YouTube and who doesn't get to be successful on YouTube is a great worry for me and for many Canadians. And so
yeah,
rest assured that we'll be fighting that as much as we can. Dale, is there any other questions?
There's one other question about sort of our oil and gas sector, and just like what's being done for that. And it seems like the other parties are all against, and kind of everybody's against Western oil, and they want green. There's this kind of real push for green, but then no concern for our resources in the West. And just kind of how do we go forward in this? And is there a future with oil and gas?
Yeah, there absolutely is a future with oil and gas, and that's something that the Conservative Party and a lot of our colleagues have been working on, extensively, to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that Canadian oil is it's got the highest ethical standards. It's the cleanest oil that you can get really in the world. But we just got to be able to get that market access. We got to be able to get our product from Western Canada to the refineries on the East Coast, and that's where we talked about the Energy East cancellation back from 2015. Why that was such a big issue, but also why this Line 5 issue is a big deal. The Keystone XL pipeline was also another a big deal as well. It runs right through the heart of my riding, also our colleague Damien Kirk's riding. Damien and I both co-wrote a letter to President Biden to have him reconsider canceling Keystone XL, because it's a huge deal. And the left want to see all pipeline projects, no new projects brought on, but they also want to see the phasing out. I mean, if it was up to them, it would happen tomorrow. But there's still a future for it. We know that global energy demand is going up and the use of oil is going up. And we don't need to let the fact that the pandemic, obviously we saw the dip, but because of the pandemic, but we can't use that as a reason to phase anything out. So we need to be proud of our industry, and I think we have to paint a picture where people know where their oil is coming from. They know that's coming from Canada, not from Saudi Arabia, not from Venezuela, not from these countries that have abysmal human rights records. But let's look at the record and the standards that we have here in Canada, and why the world needs more Canadian energy, needs more Canadian oil, not less of it.
Yeah, and I guess I want to flag whoever asked the question was on point around the other parties not being supportive of it. In fact, our colleague Zaid Abotaf from Edmonton Manning is the riding called. It's like the northeast corner of Edmonton is where he represents. And he brought forward, I think we voted on it just last week. He brought forward a bill that would recognizing all the or a motion recognizing all the hard work of our energy workers and the contributions that our Canadian energy has made to the world. And Conservatives were the only party that supported that particular motion. So it's also an example of what Conservatives are doing to defend oil and gas workers, but also an example of we are alone in the House of Commons when it comes to that. So
Yeah.
it is more imperative than ever that that we win the next election, and we're looking forward to building that platform, securing our country, and securing energy independence.
Yep.
No, that's all the questions that we have. So I don't know if you either of you have any kind of closing comments that you want to leave everyone with.
Good. Well, I want to thank Jeremy for joining us in the riding of Peace River Westlock, the best riding in the country. I know Jeremy might argue with me about that, but I think it's true, and it is the promised land, and we are still the honey capital of Canada. So,
well, there you go. Well, you'll have to make a trip up there one day soon, and we can take notes and see who's his best. But as always, come on down to Cypress Hills Grasslands as well too. We got a lot to offer. It's a great place to check out. Lots of cool places to see. Lots of things to do. Thanks for having me here. It's great to talk about all these issues, and there's definitely more that impacts Western Canada, but these are some of the main ones for sure. And it's great to be able to talk about them and to also be able to represent the great people of Western Canada, and just know that we are your voice and we are doing everything that we can to represent you the best that we can. But like Arnold said, quite often a lot of these issues, it's just a Conservative Party and that's it. So
thank you everyone for joining us, and God bless you all.
thank you.